Imagine facing an enemy so powerful and relentless that even the mighty Roman Empire trembled before their strength. These warriors were not just barbarians. They were fierce strategists, charismatic leaders, and masters at destroying entire legions. The Germanic tribes didn't just challenge Rome. On several occasions, they nearly brought it to its knees. Few know the true story behind these foes who became the nightmare of the greatest empire of antiquity. Now, you might think that the Romans always dominated their adversaries, but what if I told you that the Germanic tribes achieved something few other nations did? They shook the foundations of Rome and changed the course of history forever? Who were these leaders who defied Rome's absolute power? What drove these warriors to fight until the last man? In this video, we'll uncover the stories behind Rome's most formidable enemies, the Germanic warriors. Get ready to discover how these tribes nearly destroyed the empire and the secrets behind their legendary victories. What comes next will completely change your view of who truly were Rome's greatest rivals. The Germanic tribes were much more than mere barbarian groups scattered across forests and inhospitable lands. With a culture deeply connected to nature and warfare, these peoples lived in regions that today correspond to Germany, Denmark, and parts of Scandinavia. Divided into various tribes, such as the Visigoths, Suebi, and Saxons, they shared some common values: loyalty to the tribe, honor in combat, and a belief in warrior gods. However, unlike the Romans, their social structure was more flexible, and their alliances often changed depending on the strongest leader of the moment. Rome, with its expansionist ambitions, saw the Germanic tribes as a barrier to the complete conquest of Northern Europe. To the Romans, these peoples were seen as savage, undisciplined, and unpredictable. However, this stereotype masked the complexity of the Germanic tribes, which, despite not having a centralized political structure, were extremely effective in warfare. They knew the terrain like no one else, used guerrilla tactics, and had a mobility that challenged the Roman legions. Over time, the confrontation between Rome and these tribes became inevitable. A central feature of the Germanic tribes was the figure of the warrior. From youth, men were trained for battle, and a warrior's honor was directly linked to his courage and skill in combat. Unlike the disciplined Roman armies, Germanic warriors fought with an individual ferocity that often surprised Roman commanders. They organized into small combat groups, led by a charismatic chief, and used the environment to their advantage. Ambushes in dense forests, swift attacks, and strategic retreats that confused enemy troops. For Rome, dealing with these tribes was a tough task. Over the centuries, the Romans attempted to conquer and pacify the Germanic lands, but never achieved a complete victory. The Germanic peoples fiercely resisted Roman cultural assimilation, maintaining their tribal identity intact. While Rome offered temporary alliances or tried to co-opt Germanic leaders to its cause, many of these leaders saw the proposal as a form of domination. Mutual distrust created an endless cycle of confrontations. The combination of the Germanic warriors' ferocity and the difficulty in permanently conquering their lands made these tribes a constant threat to Roman borders. It was not just about military confrontations. There was a profound clash between Rome's expansionist culture and the free-spirited, tribal nature of the Germanics. This resistance culminated in historical events that would forever change the empire's trajectory. Arminius, one of the most iconic Germanic leaders, was responsible for one of the greatest military defeats in Roman history. Born into the Cherusci tribe, Arminius spent much of his youth within the Roman ranks, where he was trained and educated in the Roman military style. However, upon returning to his homeland, he realized the devastating impact of Roman occupation on the Germanic tribes. With a clear vision of how to defeat Rome, Arminius used his knowledge to orchestrate an ambush that would be etched in history as the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest. In AD 9, Arminius united several Germanic tribes that, despite their differences, shared a common desire: to drive the Romans from their lands. He devised a meticulous plan, luring 3 Roman legions, led by Publius Quinctilius Varus, into a dense and treacherous forest. The Romans, confident in their superiority, were unprepared for what lay ahead. Arminius, knowing Roman tactics and the terrain in detail, led his warriors in a devastating ambush, completely annihilating the three legions. The Battle of the Teutoburg Forest was a disaster for Rome. Over 20,000 Roman soldiers were killed, and the eagles of the legions, the symbols of honor for the Roman army, were captured. The defeat shook the empire to its core, marking the end of Rome's attempt to expand its territory beyond the Rhine River. Rome, which had until then seen itself as invincible, was forced to acknowledge the strength and cunning of its Germanic enemies. The psychological impact of this defeat was so profound that Emperor Augustus, upon learning of the disaster, is said to have exclaimed, "Varus, give me back my legions." Arminius, in turn, became a hero to the Germanic peoples. His name was etched into history as the man who humbled Rome and proved that even the greatest empire in the world could be defeated. However, his victory also brought new challenges. Without a common enemy to face, the Germanic tribes returned to their internal rivalries, and the unity that Arminius had forged began to crumble. Nonetheless, the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest forever changed the relationship between Rome and the Germanic peoples. This event not only marked the end of Roman expansionist ambitions in the north, but also reinforced the image of the Germanics as an indomitable force. Arminius demonstrated that Germanic warriors were not just barbarian hordes without strategy, but a real threat, with leaders capable of planning and executing battles masterfully. The Teutoburg Forest became a symbol of Germanic resistance, resonating through generations in the stories and legends surrounding the figure of Arminius. These episodes reveal the complexity of the relationship between Rome and the Germanics, a constant confrontation that was not merely military, but also cultural and symbolic. The clashes between Rome and the Germanic tribes were marked by bloody battles, each with its devastating impact on history. Beyond the famous Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, a series of other conflicts shaped the relationship between these two powerful forces. One such example was the Battle of Argentoratum in AD 357, where the Roman Emperor Julian, known as the Apostate, faced the Alemanni, a confederation of Germanic tribes terrorizing the empire's borders. Although the Roman legions emerged victorious, the ferocity of the Germanics in combat left deep scars on the survivors. These battles often took place in challenging terrains, with the Germanics leveraging the local geography to ambush Roman legions. Swampy grounds, dense forests, and frozen rivers were frequently used to the advantage of the Germanic warriors, who knew every inch of their land. One such battle was the Battle of Diviso, fought in AD 16, where the Roman general Germanicus, nephew of Tiberius, sought to avenge the humiliating defeat at Teutoburg. Despite the Roman victory, the war against the Germanics was far from decided, and each win seemed merely temporary. The Germanic guerrilla tactics, combined with their ability to vanish into the terrain after an attack, made the Roman campaign exhausting and frustrating. Each battle, regardless of its outcome, left Rome in a state of constant alert. Even with superior military power, the Romans never managed to fully subdue the Germanics. This led to a series of cyclical confrontations, where the Romans would regain territories only to lose them again to new waves of Germanic attacks. The war between Rome and the Germanics seemed like an endless struggle, draining the resources and morale of both sides. Another significant conflict was the invasion of the Visigoths in AD 378, culminating in the Battle of Adrianople, one of the most disastrous defeats for Rome. Led by Fritigern, the Visigoths devastated the Roman army, killing Emperor Valens. This event marked the beginning of the end of Roman dominance in the West. The gradual collapse of the Roman borders in the 5th century was a direct reflection of this ongoing pressure from the Germanic peoples, who, instead of being absorbed by the empire, became its tormentors. These relentless clashes with the Germanics not only weakened Rome militarily, but also left a lasting legacy. The empire was forced to reevaluate its tactics and even its own invulnerability. The bloody battles left a scar on Roman memory, turning the Germanics into the empire's greatest nightmare. Even when the Romans achieved victories, they came at a high cost, both in terms of lives and resources. Leadership was a crucial factor in the success of the Germanic tribes against Rome, and many of these leaders stood out as brilliant strategists and relentless warriors. Among them, besides Arminius, figures such as Alaric, the Visigoth who sacked Rome in AD 410, and Odoacer, the Germanic leader who deposed the last Roman emperor of the West, Romulus Augustulus, in AD 476, are central to the narrative of Rome's downfall. These leaders were masters at using both diplomacy and warfare to achieve their goals, often exploiting Rome's internal divisions to weaken the empire from within. Alaric, for instance, began his military career serving in the Roman army before turning against his former allies. With a deep understanding of Roman weaknesses, he led his people on an unrelenting march that culminated in the sack of Rome, an event that shocked the ancient world and symbolized the irreversible decline of the empire. Alaric saw Rome not just as an enemy to be destroyed, but as a treasure to be seized. His attack on the city in 410 was both a demonstration of power and a demand from the Visigoths for recognition of their claims to land and security. Another emblematic leader was Odoacer, who officially ended the Western Roman Empire. The son of a Germanic noble, he grew up during a period of intense upheaval and transition. Recognizing Rome's internal weakness, Odoacer seized the moment to take power. Unlike other conquerors, he did not declare himself emperor, but pledged loyalty to the Eastern Emperor while ruling Italy as king. His rise marked the beginning of a new era, where Germanic leaders not only defeated Rome on the battlefield, but also took its place as rulers of the lands that once belonged to the empire. These Germanic leaders, with their combination of brute strength and political cunning, transformed the course of European history. Rather than being mere destroyers, many of them became architects of a new world, where Roman power gave way to Germanic kingdoms that would shape the future of medieval Europe. The terror they inspired in Rome was accompanied by a grudging respect, as the rise of these kings signaled the emergence of a new order.